Hello, system thinkers. Welcome to the recap for episode 076 with my good friend ToniAnn. ToniAnn, thank you so much for jumping in and hosting again with me.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So this is the day after for us. So yesterday was the 1 hour deep dive on Thursday, and it is now Friday. ToniAnn got up early and had a big workout already this morning. She's an early bird. And so we set aside some time here just to talk through what our big takeaways were after sort of having that deep dive, looking at all the data, and then sleeping on it. And so it was a really fun episode. I always enjoy these deep dives. It's like the community kind of brings stuff that you just never think of, to the conversation, which was really fun. So for those of you who haven't yet seen what we discussed in this episode, the topic was enabling craft through a design system. And we asked 4 questions. The first question was, how should a design system team enable craft in their organization? And we gave folks 5 options to choose from. They had to choose one. The first option was teach, using education and rituals. The second, encode, using system and components. Or they could choose both roughly equally, or they could say, it's not our job to do this. Or we always give an NA or other option as well. The second question was, which specific mechanisms has your team used to enable craft? And they could choose all that apply. They could choose from critiques with explicit quality criteria, UX or principles-based training, reference apps or North Star design examples, opinionated components that limit off-brand choices, polished templates or starter kits, quality gates or sign-off processes, pairing design system folks with product teams, or they could say, we haven't used any of these systematically, or of course, NA or other. The third question was, where does the craft gap in your organization come from? And again, they could choose all that apply. And they were choosing from hiring, basically saying we're not hiring for craft. They could choose AI tools, reducing the incentive to develop craft skills. Design system team expected to enable craft without the authority to enforce it. There's no shared definition of what craft means. Speed pressure, leaving no time for refinement. Or craft has never been a priority for us. And then, of course, NA or other. And then we gave them one open-ended question, which was, if you could instantly give your design system or product organization one thing to increase craft, what would it be? So lots of data to dive into here. We sent this out to 1,105 design system practitioners. We got 64 responses. And as always, wherever you're watching or listening, there's a link for you to click to go see the raw data yourself. ToniAnn, where do you want to start? There was a lot here, and these quantitative questions gave us, I don't know if these were kind of what you expected to see in the answers. Maybe that's a good place to start. What was your expectation around some of these?
Yeah, I think it was what I was hoping to see.
Okay.
I think, I expected that design systems teams feel a responsibility for craft to some extent. Scaling anything out in an organization through design systems, craft is definitely a part of that. So I wasn't surprised that it's not our job. Wasn't really a very common answer.
Yeah.
My personal belief is that it should be scaled through both teaching and encoding. So I was kind of expecting or hoping that would also be the answers. But I kind of was surprised about the people who didn't respond to both, the differences between teach and encode, or teach slower than encode.
That's funny because I feel like this idea of the design system team sort of having the expectation to teach craft to product teams, this comes up a lot in our sessions, in our deep dives. And I think there is a group of folks who feel, I don't know if it's resentment, but there's it's kind of hey, we work our butts off to be really good at what we do, and we would expect the same from everybody else. And I think also when you look at tooling, especially something like Figma, where it's there are product designers out there who know how to use it amazingly to create product, but the skills you need in Figma to work systematically are different. And so there's almost a bifurcation in what we learn in our tooling. Part of it is around just creating something beautiful and elegant and solving a good problem, a design problem. And part of it is about taking that problem and making it systematic. And that's like two different parts of a product like Figma. So
Yeah.
we have a different set of skills in Figma than our consuming teams do. And so that creates this weird area of like, is it our job to teach them how to use the systematic parts of a tool like Figma? Do you feel that tension?
Definitely. And I think like I have felt that tension in different ways. I've gone back and forth probably on my own personal opinion. And I think it really depends on two things. One is org size. Teaching Figma skills in an org that's really large feels like there's a lot more tension there because it's everybody's responsibility to figure out how you can scale out your work, how you can share it, how people can kind of come and go into your teams and contribute. And so I think when you don't have that happening at an org that's much larger, the responsibility feels higher.
Yeah.
And it feels tough for systems teams to do this. At a smaller org, you can kind of get away with being a little bit more scrappy.
Sure.
But I also think it depends on the level. Like I've changed my opinion on this throughout my career as like an IC versus now managing design systems teams. I see it kind of like I've had moments of very high frustration and being responsible to teach people. And a lot of the times when I reflect on when that happens, it's usually also because you're like a team of one. You don't have wide design system support, right? People don't really understand what it takes, and you don't have other people around you trying to say, this is the standard. You don't have leadership teams helping to set and like calibrate a bar to the standard of like scaling design systems concepts or systems concepts.
Yeah, it's true. It's like the scaling part of this is hard because I think that if you're going to do teaching, like even here, like rituals, well, the rituals require like people to participate in them. And so it's to scale that, it's like if you're in a big org, how the heck do you scale that across, hundreds of designers, potentially, maybe thousands, right? And so then we have to become educators, right? Instead of just systems practitioners. And that's like a whole different set of skills for us to learn too. And that means we're creating curriculum, we're creating, videos and trainings and all this other stuff. And I don't know, that just was like, maybe that's not what we studied, so it's just like a different set of problems to solve.
Yeah, it's definitely not what we studied, but I do find that most people who end up in design systems and kind of stay there for a good chunk of their career tend to be natural leaders. They tend to be the people who get the most questions, not even about systems, really about anything. And so, I think it is tough to scale that out. But there's another side to this that's probably a little bit more related to figuring out how you do that takes a lot of time. But if you're doing it alone when you start, that's one thing. If you're doing it alone forever, that burden, that weight carries on. And I think we saw this in some of the answers too of like, how is the organization? This isn't just a design systems problem. Craft is everybody's responsibility. Systems people feel a responsibility for a portion of that, but you can only go for so long before you're the only people driving that in an organization.
Yeah, that's so true. Two things come to mind. One is, let's come back to this idea of what is craft, because I think we should probably talk a little bit about that. But also, I just want to pause really quickly to call out an article that just came out from our friends over Ashley and Casey over in Redwoods. They did some research last year as a part of one of the events that we ran as a community, and it was about education and systems. So it's really relevant to this. And they just released part 2 of this series they're doing on education and systems. So definitely go check that out. And there's two good pieces there, and they're working on more material there. So.
Yeah. And I think a quick plug for both Ashley and Casey as people. Like I saw Ashley present at Converge.
Yeah.
You can tell how natural of an educator she is.
It's so true. Yeah.
And also she's such an approachable person. Like her personality lends itself really well. And I managed Casey. She was on my team, very much the same. Casey was like the go-to person. Everyone like wants to have insight from Casey, from people who are like really passionate about educating and who can kind of like hold the line of, pulling in some patience at times, trying to figure out how they break down concepts and go, well, I don't really understand how they're not understanding and really walking back from that. So I think that natural education is
Yeah,
something that Ashley and Casey are very good at.
it's true. And it just reminds me, ToniAnn, that like there are like a part of this is like this sort of like characteristics that individuals bring. You know, those two are both really smart and they're both very compassionate educators, like deep down, you know. So of course this is an area where they want to focus, and I'm glad that they're doing that and sharing it with the rest of us. So yeah. Okay, so talk to me about so a large part of our conversation was around sort of like what is craft. And I think in the conversation at the beginning, I do think we sort of conflated craft with quality, right? And so talk to me about sort of coming away from the conversation the next day now. How do you think about those two words?
Yeah, I still feel like craft is an input to get quality as an output. Craft is like the care and the time and the attention that you put into things and how you move work throughout. And I was talking to people about this yesterday too, which is craft doesn't just show up as polish at the end, right? Like craft is, it should be at its best to enable the best quality. It's embedded throughout every part of your process. Every part of your process has a different type of craft that you can pull in. I think when we think about craft as designers, we often think like craft equals good looking visuals, which is true for a lot of the most part. But if you're talking about quality, and I think Donnie had brought this up yesterday, like quality is a button with a really good label that's readable, accessible, right? So I think like when I think about quality and craft, I think about the inputs that you put into your work, the time that you spend, the rigor that you spend up front in order to get something that feels high quality at the end.
Yeah, it's good. And I think it's like, I think somebody, Caroline said, quality is what we can control. You know, Sean, I actually loved Sean's comment. I'm zoomed in on it here. If you're watching this on YouTube, he was talking about how craft means something different for all those different roles, which is kind of what I hear you saying. You know, it's like, what is craft for a designer versus for an engineer, but also for a systems person versus a product person. And those are different things. And we need craft across the spectrum, I think, is to get quality output as a whole. Right. So I do like that framing. Donnie also had this idea that craft is subjective versus quality being objective, quality being something maybe that we could align on and say, as an organization, high quality for us is X, Y, and Z. And then you could say, like, if your idea of like craft leads to quality is the sort of framing we're using, then in order to accomplish all of those things, all these different disciplines and roles need craft in their own, specific areas. So it's cool. This is a good way to think about it. Maybe we should have started the deep dive with that, but we got there.
It takes reflection too. And it's hard depending on how you think about the word craft and what comes to mind when you think about it. When I think about craft, and it's probably because I just joined Etsy, so it's like I'm thinking about handcrafted. Like,
oh yeah, that's so good.
I'm thinking about like, what do we mean when we say craft, and where does that show up? Not just in design and product and UI and everything. Like when we say craft, what does that mean? Someone's really good at their craft. I think that's kind of where it drives me, that craft is the input and quality is the output. Because you can have a really high quality thing that's not necessarily crafted in a specific way or handcrafted. It can be mass produced.
Sure.
But it's still high quality, but the craft that goes into it is much different.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. ToniAnn, you're getting me into like a different headspace here, which we didn't actually talk about in the deep dive, but that's okay. Let's talk about it now.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, how does AI factor into this, right? Like, I think people are able to create things that sort of appear high quality or aligned with an organization's desired output or brand, but they haven't necessarily crafted it in the way that we've traditionally thought of that, right? Like what you're talking about is like hand crafting something, Yeah. And, I mean, the analogy that keeps coming to my mind is like, I keep, for some reason in my social feeds, I keep getting videos for how to make butter. And I'm just like, okay, I know that it's not that hard to make butter myself, but also I can go get to the grocery store and buy, really good butter.
Yeah.
And for, $5, even if it's $10, the amount of time it would take me to make it, is it worth it? So like, so this is like an interesting problem when you translate that to our world, right? Where it's like, how much time and energy should I be putting into handcrafting the code that generates this beautiful interface? Kalig was on and he was like, I don't write CSS anymore. He's like, so it's like, okay, where are we headed? How does this sit in with you?
Yeah, I still think craft is care. Like when I think about not hand coding something, or even like you're going to use AI to spin up some designs. If you get to a quality that's like minimum, you're like, cool, good enough. That works. Well, let's ship it, because speed is your priority. I wouldn't necessarily call it thing crafted, even if it looks pretty good. Even if the code quality is decent, you've spent time on your AI systems that you're getting this really good output. I don't know if that is going to feel crafted. I would be actually really curious to like run a test, like have a bunch of have a hackathon where people are like doing something and then try to assess like a blind taste test. What do you think is crafted? Like how does it feel? And then figure out if you picked the right thing.
Yeah.
But craft takes time, and I think you can still craft something really well pairing with AI. But it's more intentional. It's more like really looking through the details, fine-tuning it, making sure that everything is checked, making sure that it's still producing the output that's the bar of quality that you hold yourself to.
Yeah.
That to me is like really good at your craft.
I was going to ask you if you felt like it's possible to craft something, if AI can craft something, or if craft requires, I think we would both agree it's possible for AI to create something that is high quality, right? But is it possible for AI to create something that you would call crafted?
I don't know. There's two sides of this. I think selfishly, I want to, like, as much as we can, reserve the word craft for humans.
Yeah.
But I also feel like, and maybe it's a point of time that we're at where AI is still relatively new. It doesn't feel like AI craft. I don't know. That doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't sit right. It sounds weird when you talk about it. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
That's kind of like machine care. Like those words don't really mesh well together.
Yeah.
I don't think that I wouldn't really associate the word craft with AI, but that's why I say like, well, that's what I think now.
Right.
But if I was holding an app in my hand that I was like, this is beautiful, this is so well done, and then I'm like, well, it was all AI. How much AI was it? Is what I would want to know, right? How much are people leading the AI and using it as a tool, as opposed to using it as a completely, a whole mind and output.
Yeah. Gosh, we're into philosophy territory here, which I don't mind at all. But as like a fan of science fiction and somebody who, like, I actually in my college years I studied artificial intelligence. It was way different than it is now, but we built small neural networks to like learn and all those kinds of things, and like to see that technology evolved to what it is now and the pace at which it does continue to evolve it's like I feel like we're probably not far from, if the test is I look at the output of a thing and I have to tell whether it was created by a human or an AI. I think we're probably at a point where it's going to be really hard to tell that. And so if the definition of craft is about the user's sort of like gut in that moment when they first experience a thing, that's different than if we're just saying, no, humans craft things, AIs build things, right?
Yeah.
And maybe there's a difference there. I don't know.
Well,
okay.
I just Googled this because when I get confused on my own thinking here, I like to Google definitions of words. Crafted, if you just Google define crafted, it says something made or produced with high skill, care, or ingenuity. High skill, maybe you could say like AI will do that, right? Care, not really.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like it emphasizes thoughtful design, precision, and artistry rather than mass production. And I think mass production is where you get into like AI territory because of the speed it can produce things.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know, maybe that's where it's coming from for me. It is that care aspect.
Yeah, that's so interesting. The word care. So I guess until the models are sentient, they can't care. So
You
we're
said
looking for like general intelligence is what we're
yeah.
looking for. Okay. All right. We are way off, but this is awesome and I love it. And you and I out in SF at Config next week, we'll have a cocktail and discuss this more.
Oh yeah.
Come find us, y'all. What else do you want to talk about here?
Yeah, so I think the other thing I really loved was two of the frameworks here in order of operations and the floor ceiling
Yeah.
conversation. For order of operations, I feel like this just puts into perspective a lot. If you're in an org and you're trying to figure out this craft problem, where are you at and where do you have to go from there? And so this kind of ideal process is you define quality up front, you like have this whole definition of what this actually means. What is craft? What is quality?
Yeah.
Hopefully not just in your own design systems team, but within your wider org.
Yeah.
Then you can offer all the things that support that definition and boom, like everything's happy. Very few teams are lucky enough to ever be able to repeat that model as is. So I think that first model, which is offer everything, offer your assets, offer your processes, look at the outcomes, and then you realize we're not aligned at all.
Yeah. I
think thinking about this framework is interesting because I'm curious where people go from here.
Yeah.
What happens inside of it, and how do you reset when you're at the end of no shared target, but you already have all these processes and assets that are there.
It's like, this is like a symptom of something bigger, which is like, we don't acknowledge the full scope of what systems work actually is, right? Instead, we think we just are like, systems are components. And so if I'm a systems person, I got to go make some components. And that like asset focused concept of what a system is doesn't acknowledge that it's actually more about alignment. It's more about defining the language with which we use to discuss the problem, and all of that work requires a lot more of this stuff up front, like defining things and creating that alignment, getting that alignment with the rest of the org so that the assets and the processes that we develop are specifically intended to create the desired outcomes, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think this is a nice little framing, and it's just like flipping things around it a little bit. The thing I think that teams would struggle with here is it's not just us as practitioners that expect the output of a systems team to be assets. And so when you get hired to come in and do this, I'm working with a team right now where the leadership just is like, make us a bunch of components, and they're like, no, we recognize the need for like much more effort, but this is slower, right? Like we have to stop making stuff at the beginning and that's not what people want.
Yeah.
So,
and this was touched on, I mean, like leadership comes up a lot in these conversations. And this is something I try to think a lot about too, is like, as someone in leadership, as someone who manages a team, what is the responsibility of like pushing and having these conversations and making sure that, there's a level of support that as an IC you have to give. And we talk about education. Mm-hmm. I think that there's also that need still exists as leaders to really like educate each other and to push each other and to really align on these things for the teams. Because you can expect the design systems team to do certain things to like output high quality. But if you're really continuing to operate as those silos, I don't think it's really fair to ask everybody to figure out what does craft and quality mean at an organization when you're like deep in the weeds of trying to get component work done. How is that even time-wise possible?
It's so true. I'm also thinking about like another challenge that teams are often facing these days, especially with AI, which is like, do we buy a system or do we build a system? Like, can we just use ShadCN and whatever and make something cool? And like, that is essentially this workflow, Yeah. It's also
the difference between quality and craft.
Yes.
That comes up again, right? Like, because you can have a high quality system that you take out of the box. The system itself is high quality. Does it meet your needs? Probably not. Is it going to feel intentionally crafted for the needs of your organization and your end user?
Yeah.
Also probably not.
Right. And that's like such a nuanced difference, and it requires like a level of understanding to measure the difference in, does it feel like, something that is bespoke.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, lots to unpack there still. You mentioned this other one, which we kind of like expanded a little bit. So like at the beginning, we were sort of talking about these three layers. And so conceptually what this is saying is like, as a system team, our focus, this is all sort of a theory, right? So we're suggesting as a system team, we're focused on the quality floor, right? Can we raise the floor of quality? Like all the things that are just baked into a system, embedded in the assets, in the components, in the system itself, if folks use those things, ideally that would raise the quality floor. But it's really dependent on our consuming teams, the product teams, in terms of like how they use those assets and put them into practice to raise the quality ceiling. And so that leaves this space in between, which in this diagram, we're just calling the craft space, right? And that's where it's like, what's happening there that helps us to sort of slowly repeat this, right? We raise the floor a little bit. Teams use those things well, which raises the ceiling. We re-embed that stuff back into the system, which raises the floor, which lets them work even at a higher quality level. So over time, the collaboration between these teams is what really raises quality as a whole. And then somebody on the call, I'm trying to remember who that was, Ilya maybe, said that the highest level here is actually the expectations of our customers. So we added this layer in, which is like they're coming to the experience, to our app or our product or whatever, with a whole different set of experiences, and we got to make sure we're meeting them where they are.
Yeah.
So did this resonate with you?
Yeah, I love this framework because it paints this like really beautiful picture about how design systems and product teams work together to enable an organization. And we say this a million different times in a million different ways. But I think this framing for me about like the design system is the quality floor. This is the minimum baseline that we all expect out of each other because we've all agreed that this is what good looks like, enough so that we also want to scale it. Like if it's not in this system, it's probably because we don't think it's good enough or we don't think it's scalable enough. There's other reasons for that too, right?
Sure.
But one way of that, looking at that conversation is it's really just not there yet. We can't scale out something that doesn't meet our minimum bar for quality and isn't well crafted to get there. Yeah. And so I think this is a kind of a nice framing around design systems in a way that feels more like energizing and inspiring to talk to product teams about as well. Yeah. And that ceiling becomes a lot more collaborative. It's trying to figure out how we get there together. And I think like even just the picture that you're painting around like, well, we have this ceiling, we figure out what works, and then we start to elevate and raise the floor. I think that's something that I'm really curious to see how design systems teams can do over time, especially now that we have like AI. If you want to use AI to accelerate your work, to test things out, to try things out, in theory, you can use that to help raise your quality ceiling. Sure. You can get there a lot faster, and you kind of can figure out what's working and what's not enough to bake it into the design system. So it just requires everyone to feel like the system is the quality floor, not the like limiting factor or well, I have to use the system, right? I can't deviate. I can't be creative because I have to use the system.
Right.
I think it pushes that a little bit more and says like, we'll use the system because it's baseline. But if you have something that's way better than what the system offers, full freedom, please do it.
Yeah. See, gosh, it's like, I want to work on a system team that you're running, ToniAnn, because like the posture that you come to it with is so, it's like refreshing. Yeah. And I think we're, as an industry, to me, it feels like we're coming out of that sort of like, I mean, we have been for the last couple of years, I think, but I'm feeling it more and more. We're coming out of that phase of like systems are intended to constrain what consuming teams can do. Instead, like you're saying, this framing sort of says, no, we're just setting the baseline. Go do amazing things, and we'll take the stuff that's great that could be spread around the org and encode it, So it definitely lets these teams sort of focus where they have better expertise, One thing that I'll say is I do this with some of my clients. I do these cultural assessments. And the framework that I use is called the competing values framework. It's an old one. I didn't develop it, but it maps out these quadrants of sort of like primary cultural leanings that different teams or individuals or organizations have. And for the longest time, the system teams that I evaluated all fell on the left side of that diagram, which is, it's called an internal orientation. That means these are teams who are making decisions based on things happening inside the org, which makes a ton of sense for a system team, right? Because we are most of the time building tools or stuff, processes, assets, all that stuff for internal teams to use. So that made a lot of sense to me. But for the last 3 or 4 of these that I've done, the system teams are moving to the right side, which is like where competitive or like a little bit more like disruption, competition sort of happens. And I was trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Like it's like this weird thing that I'm starting to see. And in my mind, that almost goes against this diagram, right? Which is like saying, hey, quality 4 is about standardization for the good of the organization. Quality ceiling is about us doing something better than what the competition is doing and innovating and like creating new things, disrupting,
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you've sensed that at all as you've moved between different organizations, like a more like a desire for system teams to be the ones doing the innovation. Is that something you've picked up on, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I haven't personally picked up on that. Well, actually, that's not true. I have, and it's also kind of what led me to ask this question about craft, because it feels like there is some sort of like pressure happening now where this happened early on. Like my first design system I ever worked on, the soundbite was like, hold the line, right? It was always in a way that like really didn't produce a healthy culture between design systems and product at all. And I think systems teams that have gone through this arc where it's like, no, just do whatever you want. We're just here to like give you the stuff, use it because it's great, or don't because you have different goals, cool. And I think now we're seeing this pressure a little bit. I see this pressure between the orgs I've moved through slightly, but I think it depends on how the teams are organized and framed. The reason why I said no at first is because I don't think it's still early on, but I don't feel this pressure. And I think one of the reasons is because we have dedicated people on our team who are responsible for looking at that quality ceiling, who aren't the people making the components on the design system.
Oh,
Not
nice.
trying to set the quality bar by pushing it into a component. It's working with the product teams, trying to envision, trying to set this like point in time of where we're trying to go, right? This place on a map of where we're trying to go, and then figuring out, okay, we all agree, right? This is great. This is wonderful. We can prove it out. And we talked about vision a little bit yesterday as well. Then once we all agree, we're like, this has to be our floor. That's when we bake it into the system. And so I think that there definitely is a pressure on design systems teams to start setting higher bars. But if it's not done the right way, that pressure becomes like a kind of an issue, right? If you don't have support from leadership, if teams don't have the authority to enforce or, like share out that quality bar, and that like line of where we all think we should be with our craft.
Yeah. You talked about in the deep dive, this idea of the vision that a system team needs has to be bigger than components. And like that really, to me, like that really resonated. I think a lot of teams do get stuck in that, like, and this is kind of what we talked about with the order of ops stuff too. It's just like, go make stuff, instead of like thinking more holistically about the problem. So
yeah, then
so
you have
much
to like
to unpack.
and breaking down the system with teams.
Yeah.
And then you can start to bake that in. And like we did this at BetMGM, we were talking about primitives at the time. And like primitives as a design systems concept are one thing, but we were trying to figure out is what do primitives actually enable for us? One part of that conversation was a quality floor, was like, okay, we need to standardize some things, which also means we got to like reduce a lot of the noise, a lot of the decisions, maybe reduce the amount of typography variables we have available, reduce the amount of spacing differentiation. But that was not done in a system vacuum. That's done like in collaboration with our product design partners and leaders there. And I kind of see that at Etsy as well, as like our teams partner together to figure out like, this is where we want to go. And usually we're not worried about the design system right now. It is a part of the conversation. It's just not a limiting part of that conversation.
I love that. Yeah. Awesome. Anything else that stood out to you? Like, is there anything, here's the question I want to end with. Like, what are you changing about your work next week based on the things that we unpacked in this deep dive?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is trying to push this floor ceiling concept more.
Okay.
And really lean into this and see where we can operate in a way that helps make that vision, that like beautiful, harmonious vision of product teams and design systems teams working together in order to like create a product that's actually really, really sound and over time just keeps getting better. And I think just trying to posture in a way that the system kind of looks at what's not working, figure out what is our floor, where in our system do we feel like our floor is a little bit too low sinking in,
Right.
and like really focus on that energy and effort in the design systems work. And then pair with these teams and try to enable and do as much as we can to support the teams who are setting that ceiling.
Yeah.
And hopefully fold that in. Like think about road mapping. We're already talking about 2027. Like what does 2027 look like? What of the ceiling are we going to start to bake in order to raise the floor? I just think the narrative's really, it's sound. It really resonates with me.
Awesome. Well, more to discuss here for sure. ToniAnn, I just always come away from conversations with you feeling encouraged. So thank you for the positivity that you bring to this. I feel very grateful to have you in the community and just to have gotten to know you. So thanks for co-hosting. Thanks for bringing this awesome discussion to us.
Yeah, likewise. Honestly, it's great to have these conversations with teams. I think this is how we get there as a design system community.
All right, folks, we'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Question. Remember, you can get access to the raw data, the collaborative Fig Jam, and all of the recordings for this episode and many more on my website, bencallahan.com. If you or your team could use an outside perspective in your design system efforts, I'd be honored to support you in that way. There's more information about my coaching and consulting offerings over on the site. And if you need a hand building a sustainable design system program, my studio, Sparkbox, is standing by, ready to partner. Hiring Sparkbox is an investment in your design system and your team. Reach out and let's see if there's a good fit. Thanks for being here, and remember, stay in learning mode.